Hello and welcome once again to the Dr. Zeero Free Magic Secrets Show, where we investigate all forms of magic from across the globe and through world history. And today we're going to talk about one of the most important features of magic and witchcraft, and one of the greatest secrets if you haven't been paying attention. And it's hard not to pay attention because we're talking about the Wheel of Life and the high days of magic that are known to us through Celtic lore and have also been turned into the witches' Sabbats, which are universally known. And we're talking about Samhain, Yule, Candlemas, the spring equinox known as Ostara, Beltane, Midsummer, Lugnazad, and Mabon. Now, you may wonder why, for some reason, this is so important. What is the magical significance? Well, these are all high points of magic because they represent all of us living in harmony with nature and the environment, and our whole psychology and our energy systems. They're all hooked into the natural world, of course. And this is about the spinning wheel of time, completely hooked into all the astrological patterns, what have you, and also the psychological ramifications of the exact point that they pinpoint. Because these celebrations, you have two solstices, two equinoxes, and then the right in the middle, you have the four other ones. So we're going to talk about a little bit about this today. And this is one of the features of magic that Dr. Zeero is totally hooked into. And I personally observe every single one of these, you could call them holidays or high points of the year, or, acknowledge them in some way, whether in a ritualistic form or simply being hyper aware of it. But, when this all began to develop, it was most people were farmers. It was more of an agrarian society, and the Celtic lands, the old Celtic lands in the British Isles and whatnot. And one of the key features that I really respect and enjoy about the Druids is the Druids were like the overseers of this wheel of time in all these different celebrations that went on. They were sort of the custodians of the wheel year. It was such an important part of like what they were about. And all of these high points of the year, it really denotes a different thing you're supposed to be doing in farming itself. There are definitely like serious events that happen to go with growing crops and livestock, everything you could think of on that end. And that's a long discussion in itself. And Dr. Zeero has all these notes written out that really explain what each of these means. Unfortunately, what you might call my Book of Shadows or whatever, my personal little notated grimoire of little things, it isn't with me, unfortunately. It's kind of somewhere in storage, so I can't pull it out and read it right now. However, I do have a book with me that touches upon all these subjects, and I want to drone on about all these subjects for a while with you in case for some reason this is all material that you're familiar with but aren't completely sold on, or may not be adding into your rituals of the yearly contemplation of everything that's going on. So I have a book by Silver Ravenwolf, and it's such a witchy goth name. But Silver Ravenwolf, she's put out a whole bunch of books, but this one might be her magnum opus. It's just called Solitary Witch, the ultimate Book of Shadows for the new generation. And it is a gigantic book that clocks in at, it's got to be over 1,000 pages. Yeah, it's clocks in somewhere around 700 pages, I believe, actually. And it's modestly priced, and it's got every possible item you could ever want to touch upon witchcraft is at least mentioned here, or at least the concept is transmitted, even if it isn't a huge blown up section. So this is an amazing piece of work you should really get your hands on. Some people ignore this author because of other stuff that they had done, but this thing is so solid. But we're talking about the Wheel of the Year, and what Ravenwolf says is that the Wheel of the Year is best known in modern witchcraft as representing the cycle of the seasons throughout one calendar year. This symbolic wheel is divided into 8 parts, with each spoke of the wheel representing a particular season. Although witches consider the Wheel of the Year to be a Celtic European symbol, it actually appeared in Greek references as early as 600 BC. Once again, we see the threads of craft history shooting back into the realms of the ancient civilizations in the Mediterranean world. There is equal debate on the origin of the word Sabbat. Most feel it was birthed in the witch trial era, then coined by Margaret Murray, who lived 1862 to 1963. She was an anthropologist who tried desperately to put the pieces of the historical witchcraft puzzle together. Although Margaret's work was received well by the public and the scholars of her time, it has since been torn to shreds. However, we cannot dispute the basic kernel of Margaret's theory. 1. Pagan earth and fertility-centered celebrations did exist for thousands of years. 2. Magical practices in the populace weren't something new. These applications had been around for thousands of years. And 3. Pagans had religion. Ergo, our ancestors' celebrations were magical as well as religious and cultural, with dividing lines between the three intensely blurred. Let's talk about the witchcraft Sabbats very briefly. The modern Sabbat ritual, representing one of the 8 high holy days, can be intricate or as simple as you desire. The ceremony's main function is to honor the season and the gods, and to ask for their harmonious intervention in our lives in the coming months. Each ritual celebrates one portion of the cycle of life. Yule and Candlemas are inception. Beltane and Ostara are birth and growth. Midsummer is maturity. Lammas and Mabon are harvest. Samhain is death and its subsequent spiritual transformation. These holidays are both original and reconstructionist, depending upon the mythos you choose, which is sometimes confusing to the new student. Each Sabbat can have several stories attached to it, some ancient and others relatively modern. In large Wiccan groups, ritual drama may be a significant portion of the ritual, where members act out characters or deities, much like in a play, complete with props and techno marvels. I have witnessed Sabbats where the sets, costumes, props, and other devices cost well into the thousands, and a Georgian group did so well when performing in Texas that many in the audience really thought that the death of the god included the demise of the actor. Conversely, I've been to celebrations where the only expense entailed a jug of apple juice, a box of cookies, and a few candles, the mind and imagination of the witch being the primary focus. Neither type of ritual could be considered better than the other, as both were most fulfilling, and both the rituals in some way or another focused on raising energy. You will also find differences in altar placement, where some groups keep their altar in the same area all year long. Others move the altar to match the holiday, as on the wheel pictured at the beginning of the section. There are those witches who dispense with all that movement and simply place the altar in the center of the circle. Quarter calls may also differ. For example, a single group may always start at the north to open the quarters for Esbats, but choose the quarter that most matches the season from which to begin their Sabbat ceremonies. Most Sabbats are followed by a feast, where each member brings something to eat. This can be as extravagant as a full meal or as simple as a collection of munchies. Where Esbats are performed primarily at night, lunar workings, many Sabbat celebrations, solar holidays, are done during the daylight hours, if the group has the opportunity to meet at that time, save for Samhain, which is primarily done in the evening. Though, again, there is no right time to perform a Sabbat celebration unless you are following astrological correspondences and timing your ritual to the moment that the sun crosses over the 15-degree mark of the appropriate sign. So on Samhain, the sun is at 15 degrees Scorpio, water. At Candlemas, the sun is at 15 degrees Aquarius, air. On Beltane, the sun is at 15 degrees Taurus, earth. And Lammas, sun is at 15 degrees Leo, fire. Notice that these are the 4 fixed signs of the zodiac, with each of the elements represented in the festival year. The idea here is to hold on to one's fortunate happiness and love, making it last as long as possible. These festivals are also known as the fire festivals, and some call them the cross-quarter festivals. They are best known in history for their association with people lighting bonfires atop hills in the hope of kindling the light of spirits within people's hearts and warding off any negativity through the purification of the fire. The other 4 holidays are definitely solar-driven. Winter solstice, Yule, December 21st or around that time, when the sun is at 1 degree Capricorn, Earth. Spring equinox, Ostara, March 21st or around that time, when the sun is at 1 degree Aquarius. 1 degree Aries, fire. Summer solstice, midsummer, June 21st or around that time, when the sun is at 1 degree of Cancer, water. Fall equinox, Mabon, September 21st or around that time, when the sun is at 1 degree Libra, for air. Notice that these are the cardinal signs of the zodiac and are each in their own way considered festivals of beginnings, especially related to any work regarding their element, earth, air, water, fire, etc. Again, there is one festival for each element. These celebrations are sometimes called the quarter festivals. After you have worked with both types of high holy days, you will begin to see unique differences in the categories. The fire festivals occur during mid-sign, in the middle of an astrological sign, and seem to demand that you make changes and adjustments in your life, work on the old, where the quarter festivals fall in sign transition, when the sun is leaving one astrological sign and entering another, and encourage changes towards the new. Quarter festivals bring their energy into your home environment approximately 1 full week before the astrological occurrence actually takes place. For example, you may buy a new computer when the sun is in Gemini, communication, and place it in your dining room for family use as the sun moves into Cancer, home environment, without even realizing it. The human condition is very much tuned to these eight high holy days, even though you may not recognize the influences. Although there are a few groups in the craft that use the same ceremony for every Sabbat, most delight in researching history to discover what neat new thing they can incorporate into their ceremonies, lending variety to the seasonal celebrations, as well as introducing historical trivia to coven members. Some groups require beginning students to take on this challenge. In cohesive groups that have many covens in one sect, such as the Black Forest, covens may actually compete to see who can come up with the most inventive Sabbat of the year. Where Esbats may be single coven oriented, Sabbats may become clan gatherings. The Sabbats are also conducive to public rituals. Where you may not be invited to attend a local group's Esbat or moon rituals, they may open the doors for the high holy days. Check your local magical or occult shop to see if they hold open celebrations. The remainder of this section includes a basic solitary Sabbat ritual formula and briefly covers the 8 high holy days with minimal historical information that matches the ritual provided. There is such an abundance of lore that could be incorporated in any one ceremony, there just isn't enough room here. At the end of this section is a suggested reading list if you would like to investigate these holidays further. Please note that in some traditions, the date officially celebrated may be different, and there's been tried to make note of that under each holiday. In reality, many of the holiday celebrations historically span several days. In the Wheel of the Year, the craft shows its agrarian roots by matching the seasons to agricultural practices and climate with teachings of inception, birth, growth, maturity, transformation, harvest, death, and rebirth. It is this cycle that I have tried to present here. So the basic, I'm not going to get into the rituals because that isn't a fun, it's just going to, we're skipping that. So we're just going to jump into Samhain, talking about that. So Samhain was the beginning of the Celtic year. It's, of course, like we all know, it's celebrated as Halloween or All Hallows Eve, initially known as Samhain. And I don't have to talk much about the mythology behind Halloween. Everybody kind of knows what's up. And, of course, there are tons of legends and lore you could factor into this, and I could talk a very long time. But it's that moment, the psychology, the eeriness of the harvest being done. You're about to enter into winter. Think of how everybody is psychologically at that point. That's the key to understanding these high holy days. Understand where the group consensus is, right? And the group consensus, they're all being affected by the weather, the exact moment in time that you are. So Samhain is a Celtic word, and it means summer's end. There is no historical record, by the way, of any Celtic god called Samhain or Lord of the Dead. This was made up in the 1700s. There's no such thing. So, of course, it's celebrated October 31st, sometimes November 2nd or November 4th. It just depends where it lies. And if you look up archaeoastronomy, you'll get the best definition of like where it was. For the past few years, if I'm correct, it has been on November 5th. Very specific time. But so the meaning of the word is summer's end. The primary focus is transformation, regeneration, honoring the dead, divination, honoring the harvest, and preparing for the winter. The age of holiday. It's the second oldest unbroken holiday in the European world, and it's approximated at being 6,000 years old. The popular mythos is Caradwyn's cauldron of transformation, feeding the Morrigan, sniggling the Cailleach, festival of the dark goddess. And its astrological sign is 15 degrees Scorpio. The planetary ruler is Pluto in modern parlance, and Mars in a classical sense. No one has described Samhain better to the public than Ronald Hutton, professor at the University of Bristol. With his kind permission, the following is taken from his excellent book, The Stations of the Sun. So he says, Halloween developed from the Celtic feast of Samhain, which marked the end of summer and the beginning of winter. For the Celts, Samhain was the beginning of the year and the cycle of the seasons. Samhain was a time when the Celts acknowledged the beginning and the ending of all things. As they looked to nature, they saw the falling of the leaves from the tree, the coming of winter and death. It was a time when they turned to their gods and goddesses, seeking to understand the turning cycles of life and death. Here, on the threshold of the cold, barren winter months, it was also a time of feasting and celebration, as the weakest animals were culled to preserve valuable foodstuffs and provide food to last until the following spring. For the Celts, Samhain was a time when the gates between this world and the next were open. It was a time of communion with the spirits of the dead, who, like the wild autumnal winds, were free to roam the earth. At Samhain, the Celts called upon their ancestors, who might bring warnings and guidance to help in the year to come. So it's the holiday of the ghosts, you know. So, on Yule, it is usually December 20th to the 22nd, and the sun is at 1 degree Capricorn. And of course, Yule was taken over and subsumed into Christianity, and it became Christmas. And Yule means wheel. It's a Scandinavian derivation. Solstice means the sun stands still. Of course, this comes around the time when the sun stands still for basically 3 days. That's in the calendar. And there's a whole, of course, ton of religions that have mythology hooked to that as well. And Odin is just one of those. So primary ritual focus is rebirth and renewal, saning or blessings in ritual form, and burning the Yule log, which was made of yew, the hallucinogenic, poisonous, never immortal plant, which was on another token, one of the sacred trees of the Druids as well, a sacred tree in cultures all over. And you should look more into that. I won't go into that there. But so the age of the holiday for Yule, there's wooden pillars throughout Europe aligned with the rising sun of the winter solstice that have been dated from 3200 to 3000 BC. And that's in Ireland and Scotland, and Stonehenge is another one. And we calculate this holiday to be at least 5,000 years old. So with the popular mythos, there's the Battle of Oak and Holly King, where the Oak King wins. Divine King, the Stag and the Wolf, Festival of the Dark God is seen in the German Belsnickel. The astrological sign is 1 degree Capricorn, Earth, Cardinal. Planetary ruler is Saturn. It was a custom of the pagans to celebrate on the same 25th December, the birthday of the sun, at which they kindled lights in token of festivity. In these solemnities and revelries, the Christians also took part. Accordingly, when the doctors of the church perceived that the Christians had a leaning to this festival, they took counsel and resolved that the true nativity should be solemnized on that day. Scriptor Cyrus, 4th century AD. Thus Christmas began, and the dark god of the pagans, represented by the first stranger to set foot in one house bearing gifts, is the surrogate for Cernunnos, Herne the Hunter, and Old Nick, who grew into the character of Santa Claus. Yet the celebration of winter solstice is far older than the 4th century. The word Yule is of Scandinavian origin, and the Yule log is the domestic counterpart of the communal Yule bonfire, normally made of oak, sometimes ash, or yew. Come on. The log was originally dedicated to the Teutonic Thor, god of courage and fire. It was his job to dispel the cold and dark of the harsh northern winters and bring the warmth of the sun back to the people. The Yule log, therefore, was burned in sympathetic magic, hoping to inspire the god to share his blessings and bring back the sun. Decorated with ivy, ribbons, and evergreens, the log was then blessed with holy water, ale, or wine to bring manifestations. The log was lit with a piece of last year's log to close the cycle of the season from one Yule to the next. Never allowed to burn completely, pieces were saved as a charm against misfortune over the coming months. So next we have Imbolc, which is also known as Candlemas, Imbolc. And it's also known as Groundhog Day here in the United States. And it has to do with the legend of the winter goddess Kylek. And I forget the exact way. It has to do with her seeing her shadow, if I'm correct. But it deals directly with Kylek, the hag of winter, you know. So it's February 2nd, or when the sun is at 15 degrees Aquarius. And the meaning of the word means in milk. Now, the primary ritual focus is new growth, end of winter, rituals of purification, offerings to deity, candle rituals. The age of the holiday is unknown, but the popular myth is pouring milk on the ground associated with the goddess Bridget and laying the Kylek to rest, and Lupercus, the wolf god in Italian witchcraft. So it's 15 degrees Aquarius, planetary ruler Saturn in classic astrology, and Uranus in modern astrology. So in Celtic legend, the months from Hallowmas to Candlemas, called the months of the little sun, were ruled by the Kylek, or as she is sometimes called, the Kylek Bur, the Scottish female deity that begins winter by washing her plaid in a whirlpool. The Kylek is not a lady to tangle with, and she is depicted as a wild hag with a venomous temper who hurries about with a magic wand in her hand. switching the grass and blasting vegetation to unite the forces of sun, dew, and rain. Her rages are the spring storms. At Imbolc, she leaves by raising the tempests in her rake. Breed, or Bridget, on the other hand, a far more sensible goddess of healing, poetry, and the forging of fire, extends her blessings on this day, and it is to her that most generic and traditional Wiccan groups pay homage. So we have Ostara, that's the spring equinox, and it's between March 20th and 22nd, and it's when the sun reaches 1 degree Aries. The meaning of the word is Germanic dawn deity, meaning the month of beginnings or the month of openings. And the primary ritual focus is fertility, sunrise ceremonies, offerings to the goddess of spring. And it's at least 3,000 years old. Astrological sign 1 degree Aries, fire fixed. Planetary ruler Mars. The custom of giving eggs on Ostara, such as in Easter with us now, was known to the early Egyptians, Persians, Greeks, Romans, and Gauls. The symbol of life, the egg stands for our cosmic universe. The practice of coloring these eggs also dates back to ancient civilizations. The Persians dyed theirs red, where folks in other countries chose a variety of colors obtained by boiling the eggs with flowers or vegetables to achieve unique coloring. From foodstuffs and symbol of new life to courtly art object to household decoration to focus for juvenile games, the Easter egg has traveled a very long way. Now we have Beltane, May Day. And if you don't know, it's considered the second part of Halloween, of Samhain, because Samhain is a 2-part holiday. And I don't know if she's going to go into this, but it's a whole subject of say where ghosts and the spirits of the dead inhabit Samhain. Beltane has to do with the Cid, or the fairies, the magical supernatural creatures. What in the Middle East they might call jinn. The Celtic world has its own form of that, and this is kind of because fairies weren't all cute with little butterfly wings; they were terrifying monsters as well. And Beltane was a day where you would also acknowledge their presence with lighting gigantic fires on hills all over the place. So Beltane was like the fire festival, the ultimate fire festival, and it was just the heat of the summer and everything. So it has a lot of names. And it's on May 1st, or when the sun is at 15 degree Taurus. And the meaning of the word bright fire or lucky fire. And the primary ritual focus is appearance of the matured horned god, fertility, protection of animals and gardens, leaping the fire for a fortunate summer, and love magics. And it's supposed to be the oldest known holiday on the face of the planet. So there you go. There's maypole dancing that is linked to Celtic Belanus. Astrological sign 15 degrees Taurus, Earth, fixed. Planetary ruler Venus. And of the seasonal European festivals, Beltane and Samhain, the 2 great fire festivals, seem to have held the most cultural and religious focus. May Day observances are thought to be drawn from 2 sources, the fire rites from Celtic tradition and the flower rites from the Roman Floralia. In Celtic tradition, the night before Beltane, all the fires in the land were doused. A little before dawn, the people would gather the 9 sacred woods and prepare them for the birthing of the new fire, which was thought to purify the air of all evil forces. In many areas, a pre-dawn procession began that reached its culmination on the hilltops. As the people watched, the fires were kindled at the rising of the sun, and as the flames leapt, the people walked docile around the bonfire 3 times. Farm animals were sometimes paraded between the fires to remove any cures or sickness and protect them over the summer season. In some areas of Europe, people would leap over the flames of a small fire so that they too could be purified. Torches lit from the Beltane fire were taken home to light the new fires of the year. Libations of milk, butter, eggs, and bread were offered to the fire with incantations. or prayers in hopes that the growing season would be a good one. European practices included tying a wand of rowan and hanging it above the door, and collecting ashes from the Beltane fire and placing them on the forehead to purify the body and bring good luck. Water collected from wells or cupped stones to catch the morning dew, called May dew, was believed to be especially powerful for holy water, and was sprinkled about the home to ensure good fortune, health, happiness. Today, in some group rituals, the sacred fire is made to dance in a diosal spiral in honor of the Beltane purification rite. So next, talk about midsummer, summer solstice, also known as Litha. That's June 20th to 22nd, depending on the calendar, and when the sun is at 1 degree Cancer. Litha means moon. The primary ritual focuses love, marriage, divination. The age of the holiday is at least 10,000 years old. And it's the primary festival of the Horn God, Battle of Oak and Holly King, where Holly King wins, Scandinavian Baldur, god of light, and the descent of the god or goddess. 1 degree Cancer, cardinal, water. Planetary ruler, moon. At midsummer, the sun is at the height of its strength, and as with the other quarter festivals, the main element used in popular custom was fire, which has especially strong roots with the Teutonic peoples. Reports of bonfires on the hilltops and even in the streets were prevalent during European medieval times, and the celebration gave a great excuse for a major party. In keeping with Teutonic magics, water also featured prominently in the Midsummer Festival. And whether we are talking about the Greek Persephone descending into the underworld, Egyptian Isis going there to save Osiris, or Baldur's descent into the lower worlds from Asgard, the theme of descent is extremely prominent in this festival. In the craft, the descent is our journey into ourselves in an effort to see our inner being clearly and change the things about ourselves that we should feel be different or better. The second degree ceremony in many traditional groups is primarily about this type of descent and our desire to be the best that we can be. In keeping with the rituals given here, the wheel itself is a major focus of public ceremonies and was often set afire, as well as the practice of gathering the dew of the morning for health and continual happiness. Again, we see the elemental representations of fire and water. Branches of birch were also cut down and hung over doorways to ensure protection of the household. A mixture of yarrow, vervain, fern, and St. John's wort was dried, powdered, and thrown into the fire. The length, breadth, and color of the flames were considered before the future was foretold. So let's get to Lammas. It's Lugnazid. It's usually on August 1st or 2nd. So Lammas, or half mass, is the feast of the bread. Nazad means to give in marriage, and Lug is the name of a Celtic god. Therefore, Lugnaza means to give in marriage to Lug. The primary focus, it's the bread harvest, the first harvest, the grain harvest. It's the games of sport, blessing and saning rites, payment of debts, weather magic. The age of the holiday is unknown. And popular myth is the marriage of Lu to the goddess, sacrifice of fruits to the soil, season of hand fasting. It's 15 degrees Leo, and planetary ruler is the sun. And Lammas is most associated with the first of the harvest celebrations encompassing hay, grain, and cereal yields, and appears to be best known for its festival atmosphere and temporary hand fastings in medieval documentation. And finally, we have Mabon, the fall equinox. And this is the harvest home. And this is September 20th or to 22nd, depending on the calendar. Sun is at 1 degree Libra. Meaning of the word is divine youth. Primary focus is the second harvest, offering a vegetable and fruit harvest, corn festival. It's 3000 BC or older. And the popular myth is the death of the harvest lord, king and queen of the harvest. 1 degree Libra, air, and cardinal. The planetary ruler is Venus. And Mabon is the second of the 3 harvest festivals concentrating on the fruits and vegetables, as opposed to the grains of the first harvest. All the world over, great reverence has always been paid to the last sheaf of corn to be cut on the harvest field, which was believed to embody the spirit of the corn. To ensure good harvest, It was necessary to keep the spirit alive, and thus the sheaf became the center of a remarkable ritual, which, in spite of its pagan character, has persisted in many countries, notably in Scotland. Corn dollies and other talismans and amulets were fashioned at this time in the hope that the family would be blessed with good fortune. The last sheaf of corn was not necessarily made to look like a human being. Braided or bound wreaths, brooms, and other handicraft objects were also made. There is one thing for certain in the mind of the modern Wiccan. The Corn Mother has always ruled Mabon, whether she is Demeter, Breed, the Kylek, or Magdine Buana. So, that's your lesson today on the 8 Witches' Sabbats, and it's a very general introduction, but it gives you a taste. And there are many, many, many more books you can find into it, and you really need to dive in and learn all the different psychological responses and natural responses people are feeling in conjunction with the dynamic map that this wheel represents, with all of our instincts, all of our emotions, and so forth. So that much said, that's everything today for the Dr. Zeero Free Magic Secrets Show. Hit the subscribe button. Let people know I exist. Post these videos on social media. Do such things, because that's the only way people will grow. Subscribers are key, but even if it's only like 100-something people, I will still be making these videos talking to myself in space and whoever is listening. So, anyway, thanks again. Thanks for listening. And here, once again, as always, is a rock on outro just for you guys. All right, later.